Okay, time for some instant analysis on the Tyler Toffoli to Calgary trade in exchange for some prospects and picks. As we welcome in Eric Engels in Montreal. I'm in Calgary. And Eric, I guess I'll just start with you. Your thought on the trade and maybe what the Flames are getting in Tyler Toffoli as somebody who's covered him.
Right, great question. This is a guy that is a character guy through and through, and you heard that obviously listening to Milan Lucic and the Flames on the other side talking about him, all the guys that know him, and there's a lot of them in that locker room, from Sean Monahan, who played junior hockey with him, to Daryl Sutter, who coached him into the player that he credits himself to be. He said, Daryl Sutter has a big impact on turning him into the player that he is, and what he was is a very valuable player to the Montreal Canadiens. I don't think they get to the Stanley Cup final last year without him. He had a 28-goal season in 56 games last year. We know he can do that. But Brad Treliving, Daryl Sutter, and anybody else who spoke on it was absolutely right. This is not a guy that just scores goals. He's very effective at both ends of the ice. Doesn't take penalties, as Daryl Sutter mentioned, and he's just a clutch guy. Like, he's a guy that if you're going on a playoff run, you want this type of player with you. And I think Brad Treliving clearly understood that. He pounced early and made a really smart move. It's a good move for the Montreal Canadiens too, as much as they value Tyler Toffoli. What I'm wondering on your end, Ryan, is how do you see him fitting in? Where does he slot in on this revamped Calgary Flames team with his acquisition?
Yeah, first of all, Eric, I think it's a real message to this team. You heard Brad Treliving today say, look, the players have done their jobs. It was time for me to do mine. So he went out and got some serious help way ahead of the deadline, more time to fit in, even though there's a seamless transition likely for this player with this team and that coach. But I think, this is a move that for Calgary really sets the market as well. They wanted to set it. They did. They got the player they wanted. They weren't competing. So I think they're looking at it, and it arrives tonight. So the reality is you could see him in the lineup as early as Tuesday against Columbus. It's a back-to-back situation here. Where does he fit in? Well, early talk, at least with us covering the team, looking at it this morning and thinking, okay, does he play with Monahan, who he played with in junior? Monahan a little bit younger, and Dylan Dubé. There's some thought there. Or maybe there's some chance that he'll see some time with Milan Lucic, who he's also good personal close friends with. They spent time in All-Star weekend together. So there is a lot of familiarity, and there is a lot of seamless, smooth transition into this new role. And you talked about how, what a goal scorer he is, what a big time player he is, but he also fits in seamlessly from a standpoint of the experience. There's a lot of players here, and Brad Richardson, and, you could look at Milan Lucic, and all of a sudden, last year, they bring in a Stanley Cup two-time champion from Tampa Bay. So there's lots of Stanley Cup pedigree in this lineup, Trevor Lewis as well. So I think with this, they feel they've got options on where they want to play him, and they feel comfortable anywhere they want to put him. So I wonder, I guess now, just quickly, the reaction in Montreal to maybe the first big domino.
Right, the first big domino and what's expected to be a rebuild in Montreal, retool, rejig, whatever R word you want to use here for what's going to happen. And, they were not in a rush to push Tyler Toffoli out the door, but with the expressed interest of the Calgary Flames, being able to get 4 assets in this trade, a first-round pick that's obviously lottery protected, a 5th-round pick in 2023. Tyler Pitlick, obviously, we understand injury right at the beginning of training camp and hasn't gone his way in Calgary. He's also, a pending unrestricted free agent on an expiring deal worth $1.75 million. So, it might be a short stay in Montreal, or maybe he finds some chemistry with his cousin Rem. It's an interesting scenario for the Canadiens to have him as the throw-in to this deal. I think what everybody wants to know, though, is what is Emil Heineman all about? Because that is the prospect that came back in this deal, and I think the Canadiens were very interested in getting him.
Yeah, and the reality is I don't think a lot of people here in Calgary know him. He came over as part of the Sam Bennett deal, unsigned, but certainly a player that they coveted when they made that move. And I think there is some genuinely good buzz around him. I think time will tell about what kind of player he can turn into. It sounds as though, and in the conversations I've had, this is a guy who's projected to be a top 6 guy eventually. So just in closing, I think Calgary is absolutely buzzing the city about this move. And it really sends a message that they are trying to, go all in, if you will, on a team that has shown that on any given night they can play with some of the best teams in the league. So everybody in the room is excited about this move, and everybody in the city is waiting to see how it all pans out, because for the first time in a long time, this is Brad Treliving's biggest in-season move that he's made, and I think everybody's waiting to see how it pans out.
Well, I think before we wrap it up, Ryan, we got to look forward, right? Given everything that you just said, you got to wonder what the next needs are for the Calgary Flames. And I reported they've been hot on Ben Sherratt. We've known about it for the last little while. There's a lot of teams interested in Ben Sherratt, at least 12 to my knowledge. And I think Calgary was right at the top of the list of teams interested. And maybe he'd have been in this deal if he wasn't on the IR for the next week. So what do you see happening, especially from, whether it's Sherratt or another defenseman potentially coming in there?
Yeah, I think you're bang on, Eric. I know Sherratt has been talked about a lot here. That discussion has gone on. Whether or not it unfolds, time will tell, but it's a player they're aware of. And as you said, other teams covet as well. So I think we wait to see. The only thing I would caution is that this defense, there was a lot of people coming into the season that looked at this defense and they kind of thought, okay, the loss of Mark Giordano, maybe this thing isn't going to be as good. It has blossomed by just being a complete unit where, young guys have stepped up. A lot of these guys are having career years, Eric, and messing with that right now, I'm not so sure that is the answer. Time will tell if they do pull it off. He's certainly a good player who can add, but I worry about what might be going the other way. And if it is something on this existing blue line, boy, oh boy, you've got a good thing going. You don't want to tinker with it, but certainly there's smarter people than you and I who make those decisions. So excited to see what comes next, if anything comes in Calgary. And certainly there's a lot coming in Montreal.